My name is Jeff H. Sipe, and I have over 10 years of recruiting experience, including 5 years at Google. In this video, we are going to cover when to stop the interview. This can be incredibly challenging. Illegal questions, offensive questions, we know that those are good stopping points. The trickier part is when the interviewer doesn't really show up, they're not doing their job. What do you do in those scenarios? And remember, stopping the interview doesn't always mean ending the interview, but sometimes that's just the appropriate path. If you like my content, please like. If you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like my overall content, please subscribe. Item 1, illegal questions. Illegal questions would cover items such as age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, country of origin, birthplace, religion, disability, marital status, family status, whether you're pregnant or not, salary history in some states, etc. If you get asked any of these questions, stop the interview and say, Bob, you're not allowed to ask me this question. And at that point, you are going to pause and see how Bob responds. And if Bob doesn't do anything other than be extremely apologetic and say all the right things, such as he didn't know that asking about salary was actually illegal. Maybe he moved from Austin to the Bay Area, and in Texas, it actually isn't illegal to ask for salary. He mentions that he's been doing that with all other candidates, and it's a learning, and he'll definitely take that learning. Okay, maybe we continue on with Bob, but really in this list of illegal questions, there are very few where we are going to actually allow Bob to keep going. But let's be honest, most of these questions are interview stoppers. You still want to hear Bob out, see what he has to say, see how he responds, and then calmly say, Bob, thank you for your time. I'm going to end the video or phone call now. And you end it. And what comes next really depends on the size of the company. So if it's a large company with recruiters, for instance, you are going to instantly call your recruiter. You are instantly also going to follow up via email. Now, if the company does nothing, it's my strong recommendation that you move on. Let it go. Otherwise, it's just going to consume you, and I know it sucks, but any other action just isn't going to benefit you. Now, if it's a small company, maybe the hiring manager is also doing the recruiting, so maybe your point of contact is Bob. So the next right thing to do would be to inform Bob and just send Bob an email letting Bob know, hey, these questions are actually off the table. You can't ask them. And therefore, at a minimum, at least Bob's more informed, and it doesn't happen to somebody else. We're going to talk a lot about this pay it forward model. Item 2, offensive questions. We are not going to cover what offensive questions are. It's just simply, if you feel offended, you have to stop the interview and say, Sue, the question you asked me makes me feel uncomfortable. And again, it's critical here to just pause. You really want to hear what Sue has to say. And if Sue doesn't do everything in her power to apologize, make you feel more comfortable, etc., it's time to again take that step of saying, Sue, at this time I need to end the interview and say thank you, and then hang up the video, hang up the call, and follow up with your POC immediately. I know that this can be super tricky, but when you hear something that doesn't sound right, you need to stop the interview. And it really depends on how offensive it was. Maybe if it was extremely offensive, you don't even wait for Sue to respond and you just say, thank you, I'm going to end the interview now. And then again, you'll follow up with your POC. This definitely pertains to those illegal questions too. If you are asked about your race, why you're wearing a turban, what your gender is, you really need to stop, because those are not only illegal, but they're also offensive questions. And the best way to handle it is to respectfully end the interview and follow up via email, via phone call. Item 3, overall disregard for you. This is absolutely the most tricky one and the one that I want to cover because the other ones are a little bit clearer. This has a lot more gray area. Surprisingly, our clients at practiceinterviews.com are getting some really bad interviewers, and the percentage is higher than I want to admit. And this is coming from some of the maybe smaller startup companies, but it's definitely happening at the FANG companies too. And what items I just want you to look for right away is they're late, they're rushing you, they're not engaged, they're unorganized, they're re-asking you questions that you've clearly stated in your answers. Let's say it's a video interview and they decide not to turn on the camera. These are multiple items. You just know it, you feel it. It's not a good interview. Step 1, you got to start to work through it. So you got to stay positive, put yourself in their shoes. That's your starting place. You want to try and make it more conversational. Maybe you start asking questions, interjecting a little bit more. You really want to stay focused on why you're a fit for the role. But if they continue down this path, this is where I want you to be bold. You are having a bad experience, and the strong likelihood is that without this connectivity, they're going to say no to you anyway. So at this point, you basically need to say, Jane, is now a good time to conduct this interview? And pause. Jane's response will tell you everything. If Jane throws it right back at you and says, what do you mean? You really need to put Jane in her place in a couple of different facets. One, you need to say, Jane, look, Google's my dream company. I prepared and practiced really, really hard for this interview, and it seems like you're distracted. And maybe this interview was put on your calendar last minute. Maybe you have a fire and something that actually truly is more important than this interview. I want to give it my best effort, but I want to make sure we're on this journey together. And this is the path I would take with an internal stakeholder or with a customer. I would stop speaking to them if I didn't feel like we were working off of that shared vision, making sure we were aligned. I would pause, and then I wouldn't move forward until we had that alignment. And because we're not aligned, you're probably not going to recommend me. And I want to make sure that we are in this together. Is this bold? Yes, this is bold. Are you likely already not getting the job? Yes. Simply put, your interviewers have forgotten what it's like to be in your shoes, and you need to remind them, you need to call them out. It might not be the best result, but ultimately, if you feel this real negativity, you don't have any flow, they're not recommending you anyway. So you are not losing or putting anything at risk. It's just something I want you to think about, a really, really critical detail. Item 4, feedback, instant and immediate feedback. Right after you get off the call, right after you get off the video, with your main point of contact, even if that's the person who you were just speaking with. In a worst case scenario, they never do anything, you never hear back, and that already tells you everything you need to know about them. And this happens at small companies, this happens at the best companies in the world. Maybe the best case scenario is they say, we were just testing you, we want to hire you because you did exactly what we were looking for. Pretty unlikely. But maybe the good scenario is they say, hey, we really apologize, and they decide to re-interview you and give you a better experience. And maybe, just maybe, that middle category is that you provide feedback, and Sue, for instance, gets that feedback, takes that feedback, and becomes a better interviewer, and you set somebody else up for success in the future. Now, if everybody were to take this step, maybe in your future interview, you are in a better place because the last candidate told the recruiter about their bad experience and that person adjusted their behavior. Summing up, interviews are a two-way interaction, and you don't need to put up with the BS of a bad interviewer. You can stop the interview, make sure you're aligned. Bad behavior needs to be called out. It's just happening way too much with our clients. The interviewers have forgotten what it's like to be in your shoes. You need to stop and remind them. Good luck. Thanks.